All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Nikki Wente, fifth generation wine grower.
I'm Carl, fifth generation wine grower. This is my cousin.
Yep, cousins, family.
So National Chardonnay is coming up, and our family has a long history with Chardonnay, and it's something that we're so very proud of. And a lot of the Chardonnay cuttings and clones throughout the state of California originated here in our ranch in Livermore. And Nikki's father, Phil, is one of my mentors in learning how to farm grapes, and specifically learning how to farm grapes in the Livermore Valley as well in Arroyo, Seco. So her dad has taught me a lot. He loves Chardonnays, and he really taught me about the incredible breadth that you can get out of the different styles of Chardonnay. So very much looking forward to rolling through this tasting with you.
Yeah, there's just so many different styles that we have here, and so many different ways that you can make a Chardonnay, and it's exciting to be able to taste through 4 different styles. And also, when you guys are tagging or tweeting, Instagramming, all of the fun stuff, make sure to use hashtag Wente Live or hashtag Make Time, or both if you're feeling really adventurous. That would be very wonderful so that we can find you guys.
Yeah, so I got back to the winery in May of '02 after going to graduate school at UC Davis, where I got a master's in grape growing and a master's in winemaking. And then I went to Peter Michael Winery and worked a vintage, and then went to Australia and worked a vintage and came back home. And when I got back home, I partnered with our winemaking team that was here, as well as Phil and the rest of the viticulture team. And we really selected the best vineyards that we have in the Livermore Valley. Now, Nikki farms grapes full time, and I oversee the vineyards and the winemaking, so we love all of our vineyards. They're all our babies, but inevitably sometimes the cream rises to the top, and out of our estate-grown vineyards we chose the best ones, and then went out there and really just did everything that we can to farm the best grapes that we could. And then on the winemaking side, got a small lot winery, sorting tables, some small 1-ton bins, and just really went after this pursuit of making the best wine possible. And so Uncle Phil came into the office one day and he goes, you know, Carl's out there doing everything to the nth degree. Why don't we call our creme de la creme the nth degree by Wente Vineyards? And I really love the reality of that story, is there's always N+1, and Nikki and I spend a fair bit of time together, and when we're not together, exchanging emails and with the team as well. And so we're just going through the 19 vintage right now, talking about all the things that we're doing in the field to get the next vintage that's going to be on the table, because literally we've started wine growing for that vintage, 2 months ago now. So yeah. Always on it.
Always on it. And Carl mentioned my role a little bit. So I'm the viticulture manager. So basically what that entails is just farming. I am a farmer first. I've worked really hard to produce quality from the soil and work on vine nutrition and vine health and keeping everything even and beautiful in the vineyards to produce the highest quality wines when we hand that over to the winemaking team.
Absolutely.
It's a 100% a partnership, viticulture and winemaking. Our job would be really hard if we didn't have the help of Carl and his team coming out there giving us feedback on what blocks really performed well in the winery and what we could do different for certain blocks that may not have performed as well this year compared to the previous year. So lots of historical analyzation that we do.
Absolutely, and there's no substitute for experience, right? I'm coming up on my 20th vintage overall, my 17th vintage here coming up on my 18th vintage here at Wente Vineyards. I mean, 17 in the bag, and it's crazy. I don't feel that old. How did I get this old?
Yeah.
But ultimately, looking back, and all of those vintages give you an experience upon which to build. Your first one, you're out there trying to stand on the shoulders of giants. Those before you learn a little something, you learn a little more every year. Yeah. And now looking back, I can't believe it's been 20 years of doing this, but overall in those 20 years, it's always been the focus on this, right? The glass of wine, and what does the wine taste like? What does it feel like? And we can always transfer back to the vineyards. We'll taste 3 17 vintage wines and then an 18 vintage wine. And then you can really sort of think about, like Nikki said, those differences. What was the vintage imprint? Because every vintage is going to be different, but then what were the things that we're doing to continually get better in any given year?
Yeah, 100%. And Carl saying that he's been here for 20 years. The fun thing about grape growing is that means you've done it 20 times because you only get one shot every year. And something just really incredible that I think Carl really brought to the VIT team and kind of made this mentality for all of us in the vineyards is technology in the vineyards. He definitely started it. I've only been with the company. This is my third harvest coming up. And so I've only been here for a short little time. Born into it, you know, it feels like 26 years, 27 years, but it's really just three consecutive, I'll say. But just kind of taking over the viticulture department with Carl, leaving it a little bit more to me and Keith and the vit team. He really did bring a lot of technology into the vineyard. We're using sap flow sensors to check in on how much water and nutrients are being taken up to the vine by putting couplings on the actual cordon of the vine, so really getting in there and not hurting the vine, but trying to really read what's going on inside the vine. We also have Tule Sensors, which what that is measuring evapotranspiration, so how much water is leaving the leaves. As well as monitoring our irrigation flow. It has a little sensor that goes right through our drip line, so we can track how much water we're putting on and how much water is exiting the plant. So a lot based around water, of course, because we all know in California, water is a huge thing that we're all focusing on all the time, because even though we're not in a drought right this second, we could be tomorrow. And it's raining outside right now, so what am I saying? But also, as far as technology goes, we are putting a lot of effort and energy into many different things. Robotics in the vineyards is really coming up in the forefront, and we're really putting some effort and energy into that. More to come in the future, hopefully.
Right, and we just had our first autonomous mower out in the vineyard for the first time, where it was going down, making the turn and coming back. Nikki and her team look at aerial images of the vineyard, so you can see the higher growth spot, the lower growth spot on the bottom of the hill, the top of the hill. And as Nikki said earlier, it's really about trying to drive the uniformity in the vineyard so you can get those best expression coming out. Also, there's sensors where you can just put something over a leaf and it can give you a nitrogen level. You can point this thing at a cluster, a red grape cluster, and it can give you a color level, the amount of anthocyanin in those berries, non-destructive, without even pulling the berries off of the vine. So it's just a lot of cool tools. It's still a very old artisan trade, but using all of these tools to just really get, again, the best expression that we can. And for the winemaking team, true north to us is varietally typical, right? So we want the Chardonnay to shine through in the glass. Second is that sense of place. And really we want our vineyards to shine through. Nikki and I are so lucky that the family has 2,500 acres of estate-grown, family-owned, sustainably farmed vineyards, and every year we get to farm those and try and get that best expression coming through. And then the last is elegance and balance. And with four different Chardonnays here, they're all wildly different, but at the same time, we have that focus on elegance and balance, which has to do with acidity, it has to do with the mouthfeel, has to do with when you pick it, and again, all the choices that go into it. And one of the important things about grape growing is the clonal material that you have and where those clones come from. So Nikki's going to share a little bit about the history of the Wente clone and how it came to be.
Yeah, so basically, in 1908, our great-great-grandfather, Carl, asked his son, Ernest, to head out and find some Chardonnay. And luckily, there was some right next door at the Theodore Geer Vineyard in Pleasanton. He was able to get some cuttings from them and come and plant them on our property. A couple years later, they loved it so much, once they had their first year or two of production in 1912. And Carl sent Ernest, his son, off to France and asked him to get more. So he went to Chateau Montpellier and was able to secure some more vines, bring them back to our ranch and plant them right where he actually ended up building his house a few years later. So Ernest is there living right near the Chardonnay and started to do this really cool practice of going through the vineyard during harvest time and looking at the vines and taking in the physiological characteristics, seeing if they're looking really healthy, how the shoot growth is, how the leaves are looking, and then the ones that look really nice, he's tasting the berries, seeing if they're giving him the ideal flavor characteristics that he's really interested in. And when those two things come together and produce this perfect vine, he marks it and is able to go back during dormancy, take those shoots and replant in order to grow the vineyard. So he's taking parent material from his own property, from the vines that he sourced from both the Theodore Geer Vineyard in 1908 and Chateau Montpellier in 1912, and is expanding his vineyard. And then Prohibition hits, and most people are either ripping out their vineyard altogether or grafting over into something a little bit more sturdy, or replanting. I don't know what they were really. Yeah, combo of all of it. Because, I mean, Chardonnay is not a great shipping wine for home winemaking. But we were lucky enough to be able to work with Beaulieu and sell wine for sacramental and religious and medicinal purposes. And we were able to keep white wine grapes in the ground. So once Prohibition ended, we were kind of some of the only Chardonnay left in the valley, and that allowed for people to come to us looking for Chardonnay, and has generated what is now known as the Wente clone of Chardonnay. That's pretty well known across California mainly. You see some of it in South Africa, some in Australia, some in New Zealand, but California is probably the main place that you're going to find that clone of Chardonnay, and it's really incredible that you can still find those really specific, unique flavor characteristics on pretty much all of the vineyards that you can find that are old Wente clone. And those flavor characteristics are green apple, which is pretty typical for Chardonnay, most clones. And then there's also the passion fruit flavor that's more tropical. I don't know, like ripe banana kind of got it going on, pineapple, those kinds of flavors. And then we have the muscat flavor, which is my personal favorite. When I'm the one that's going through marking our vines, those are the ones I'm looking for. I think, are you more on the green apple passion fruit?
I'm a combo of all of them, and I think it's really the beauty of what Clone 2A and then Clone 4, and even before that, there's just the heritage selections. And so her dad, Phil, took me out in '02 into the vineyard, and this vineyard hasn't left our property since 1908 or 1912, with maybe a small exception to go get grafted, and then we come and put it right back in the ground. And they just have this amazing diversity of fruit characteristic that Nikki was talking about. You get this stone fruit, this apricot, this green apple, a riper green apple, a tartar green apple, the florals that'll come through with the muscat, and even into tropical fruit flavors, mango, papaya, guava. And so just that incredible range of fruit characteristics. And it's all Chardonnay, right? You're just eating this berry. It's all Chardonnay, but those diversity of fruit flavors. And then so every year the family is going out there and making those selections and putting new vines in. And so Phil and I have now planted 4 new vineyards, and Nikki's out there really sharing that passion that Phil brings to the table of continuing this living history of Chardonnay. And so we literally have Chardonnay clones of the Wente selection that no one else in the world has, right? All on our property here and all selected over the generations and over the years.
Right. So. Never left our property, just continued to increase the block or pick some cuttings and move them to a different location on our property. But everything has stayed, no parent material left our property for heat treatment or anything like that to rid it of any viruses. We have all the viruses.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah.
We've got some questions.
Oh.
Thank you. Dezel Quillen asked, what is the most rewarding aspect of your jobs, respectively? And he'd like to hear that from both of you. And then I have some others after that. So please let us know.
The most rewarding part about my job is the end of all of your blood, sweat, and tears is a glass of wine. So everything that you do is about making an artistic, beautiful product that tastes good, goes great with food, goes great on its own, and is a great piece of life, great piece of history, great piece of antiquity. But at the end of the day, a great glass of wine, there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah. I think that the best part of my job is being able to call my dad and ask him questions about how he would have done a situation that I'm going through, or why he might have planted a vineyard a certain way if there was something that I'm dealing with in the vineyard that I haven't seen before. Like, for instance, he planted a vineyard about 25 years ago, and we just pulled the vineyard out, and we're digging a soil pit, and water starts coming in from the sides of the soil pit at about 4 feet. And I was like, hey, Phil, do you remember this happening when you planted this vineyard? Because it's something that I was like, is there like an underground river? Like, what's happening? And it's something I can bounce off of him and see if he's dealt with that before. It's really, really awesome because my dad is my hero. So going to him and being able to talk to him about things is great. And then on the other side, going to Carl and being able to talk to him, Carl's like my big brother. it's really, really awesome for me to be so close with a family member that I can really talk to about issues at work or questions about how he would do something differently than me, and we can communicate on things at work, things away from work, and it's just rewarding working for people that you love and care about, and feeling really passionate about something. I mean, gosh, it's so easy to be passionate about something that runs through your blood.
Thank you. Mary Orlin wanted to know, Carl, two things. One is she sees a progression in quality and flavor over successive vintages for these Chardonnays, so she's interested in sort of anything stylistically different you've done in the cellar. And then she also asked about who else was a major Chardonnay producer when you were first producing Chardonnay, historically speaking.
Ooh, the second question of who else was producing Chardonnay, I really don't know the answer to that one. But ultimately, people from 1912 onward, if you wanted Chardonnay in California, you were coming to our ranch and taking those cuttings forward. And so, Chardonnay was not widely planted 50 years ago, and it's just really that growth has taken off. Now, to the evolution of the wines themselves, really Chardonnay, it's about managing the four factors, and first and foremost is the fruit. You can't fake it. You need to have good vineyards, good appellations, good climates, whether you have warm days, cool nights. And so vineyards, the right clone, the right rootstock, the right row direction, farmed the right way, picked at the right time. And the next is how you manage your barrels. And so we're constantly evolving the selection of what barrels go in each wine, and always will have 10 to 15 to 20 different barrel choices in any of the given wines, with the exception of Eric Chardonnay, which is 100% stainless steel, but we'll get into that when we go to taste the wine. So, but just managing the barrels, and then managing the surly aging and the batonnage. So how long that Chardonnay sits in the barrel on the lees, which gives that creamy, yeasty, nutty, dough-like characteristic and really rounds out the mouthfeel. And then lastly, with malolactic fermentation. So there hasn't been any large sweeping changes, because it's really found Chardonnays, I think they really work in their distinct, diverse styles that we have. And it's just that continual refinement. It's always that N+1. How do you just constantly try and take these little steps to do better in any given year? And so looking back from the first wines I made in 2002 to where we are today, I couldn't be more proud of us, of the team, of the evolution of our wine. So it's certainly been a fun journey.
Okay, great. And Nikki, a question for you from Steve McIntosh in Ohio. He wanted to know, he said, California is no stranger to weather challenges. How have recent climate events shaped your approach in vineyards? And how has that informed responses in the cellar to Carl? So, Nikki, you're up.
Yeah. So that's a really great question. I mean, in 2017, we had that 3-day heat spike in September, and we had done all of our normal farming practices, shoot thin, leaf pull, everything. And looking back, I probably would have left a couple more leaves, because just seeing the scorched Chardonnay across our entire valley was heartbreaking. And then we have to go out there and drop fruit, because you can't harvest some of that stuff. It's just, and if we are mechanically harvesting it, it's going to get picked up in the mechanical harvester. So we want to get rid of as much as we can so that we can keep this quality as high as we love it to be. So, I mean, we've definitely tried to leave a little bit more of leaf coverage, specifically in some of our Chardonnays, like morning fog, and the problem is you still want to get that penetration for fungicide prevention, or fungus prevention on powdery mildew. So you want to open up your canopy enough, but still let the penetration, the wind, the sunlight, everything be able to get through into your clusters in order to ripen it properly. So it's kind of this medium happy balance. We're trying to not over leaf anything to make sure that we keep the structure of our clusters and don't have too much sun exposure. We're certainly putting more emphasis on climate modeling and looking into what is the right approach. If there's so far, a lot of the companies that have pitched to us have all had different climate models that are saying different stuff, so it's kind of hard to judge which one's going to be right. But there's definitely going to be something in the future that will work out for us, and it's just only a matter of time before we invest in and using some sort of modeling on climate. And then irrigation patterns, I mean, we're trying to irrigate longer sets to encourage roots to go down deeper. So if you're doing 8 to 12 hour sets once a week, it's going to be a lot better for your root zone to kind of shift to have the vines digging deeper for the water rather than doing a short 4-hour set, because then all your roots will be up at the surface trying to catch that small amount of water. So the deeper that your roots are, the better for your vineyard, because then it's allowing, if there is a drought year, the roots can dig down deep for water, which is what we want in a drought year for sure. And then we're also trying out new rootstocks. So there's been a few different rootstocks, the GRN series produced by the FPS Foundation, UC Davis Foundation Plant Services. And they basically, these rootstocks are allowing for some sort of drought tolerance. We put them in the ground in 2014. So 2015 was our worst drought year, I'll say, in Livermore specifically, probably across the state, but I can speak to Livermore a little bit better. And the vines were not producing yet because they were still very young. We got our first year off of those vines in 2016. So we don't know yet, because 2016 we got a good amount of rain. So we'll see when the drought comes how those new rootstocks are treating us. But in general, it's just really focusing on how we plant, where we plant. Row direction plays into it, because if there's excessive wind, excessive rain, excessive hail, anything, it can be affected by row direction, can really help us there. And then yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that we're doing to try and make sure that we're on top of climate change.
Absolutely. And go ahead.
Oh, Carl, I was going to say, would you mind telling a quick story? For some people, this is their first time having Eric's, so a little story about how it came to be.
Yeah, well, let's have a sip of wine. Okay?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's do it. Cheers.
So this is a 2018 Eric Chardonnay, and Eric's my father, and back in the 2004 vintage, had 2 assistant winemakers, a director of winemaking, and enologists, and now everyone's just sort of young and hungry and going about it. And I said, okay, everyone gets a ton of grapes, a ton of Chardonnay that we can make any which way you want. And then so a lot of us went to the bigger, richer style of wine, a la the nth degree Chardonnay that you'll see here, which is really made in the model of what I learned at Peter Michael Winery, with picket very ripe, about 50% new French oak barrels, Cuvée and Dijon, or that natural fermentation. Surly aging for 13 months to 14 months. You go over into the next vintage where that wine's still in barrel, all the while making sure you have a good acidity that'll allow it to age. And so it's that balance of the richness with the lean natural acidity. My dad went the total opposite direction. He said, pick the grapes about 21.5 bricks, stainless steel, ferment it cold, and get it in the bottle before spring. And that's very much a recipe of how wine's made in Chablis. And so it's just a expression of Chardonnay, no oak, no malolactic fermentation, no surly aging, and you just get that expression of Livermore Valley Chardonnay. So my dad loves this wine, and I tend to drink these 3 a little bit more, but I love this one for the expression that it is, and it really showcases the breadth of what you can do with Chardonnay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so with the Eric's series of wine, you can see this beautiful label. We actually refreshed our labels recently, and I absolutely love this Eric's label, partially because I was able to make a wine as well. So there's a Nikki's Pinot Noir Rosé, and I was able to make this wine with Carl. It was a really fun experience for me. We were really excited and happy with how it turned out. I was very, very strict on how I wanted the color, so that was a challenge in blending, but really great experience for me making a wine, seeing how the press cycle goes, seeing how all of the different facets that goes into it. I mean, it's not an easy thing, and we revamped the whole Pinot Noir label to make it part of this signature name series. And yeah, I mean, that bottle is beautiful. The color is exactly what I wanted. The aroma is exactly what I wanted. I'm very happy with the Nikki's Rosé. But I myself am still a Chardonnay girl, so I switch it off. You know, I drink the Nikki's Rosé sometimes, and then the Riva Ranch, and then the Morning Fog, and then Eric.
Diversity is the spice of life, and I make a lot of great wines across, and people will ask me often, what's your favorite wine? And I just steadfastly refuse to answer, because I really don't have one. It just depends what I'm doing, and in any given moment, it's going to be a different answer. I will say that I drink more Chardonnay than any other varietal, but that's just a general trend, and because I think just the diversity of Chardonnay, again, that richness and the delicacy, that elegance, all wrapped into one. So, Morning Fog Chardonnay, the second Chardonnay that we have. And Morning Fog, so named because of the climatic influence that we have here in the Livermore Valley. And as we sit right here, we're only about 25 miles as a crow flies from the bay. And so San Francisco Bay comes in, and you go another 25, 30 miles that way to the east, and you go to the northern interior of California. That hot air rises, and then it pulls that cold air in through the Golden Gate Gap. So during the summer months, we'll regularly have a day that hits 90, 95, and it can get into the 50s at night. And so that huge diurnal swing is really what elongates the growing season and, very importantly, retains that natural acidity that you'll see through all of our wines. So Morning Fog Chardonnay, so named. And then this wine is really made two separate ways. You make a stainless steel Chardonnay, a la Eric's, and then the other half you barrel ferment. So you pick it a little bit riper, you go into barrel fermentation, surly, aged, batonnage, malolactic fermentation, which brings a richness in, and then on the table we'll blend those two pieces together, really trying to look at that tension between the stainless steel, lean mineral acidity, and then the richness from the barrel.
Question. Let's see, two things. One is, a couple of things, sorry. Mentors other than your family to both of you.
I mean, I've had so many amazing female leaders in my life. I started out working at Wente when I was 14-ish, 14 and a half, 15, just shadowing our viticulturalist that was here with us then. Her name was Jackie Moscano, or is Jackie Moscano. And she was an incredible role model, taught me so much at that age, to the point that I turned into this expert vineyard scout, and she would be able to trust me and send me out to go scouting for her and actually rely on what I came back with. And that's all thanks to the stuff that she taught me, how to see it, how to smell it, all of the different things. I mean, I can walk into a vineyard and know the smell of mildew because of her.
Hopefully I don't smell that often.
Not that often. Hardly ever. Mostly in other people's vineyards.
Yeah. So,
but no, I have more.
Oh, keep on. Take another sip of wine.
Yeah, I mean, sit back and relax. No, and then I most recently was mentored by Nicole Hayden over at Hennay's Vintners. She was such a great role model and boss for me. I was working there as a grower relations rep and doing some viticultural projects on their estates that they have. And she taught me so much about relationships with people, relationships with your company, relationships with buyers, how to format contracts, what to look for in a vineyard when you're looking at buying grapes, what to look for when you want to sell grapes, just so much. I mean, and these women are just so, they know exactly what they want when they go into a vineyard, and they get exactly what they want when they leave the vineyard. So it's awesome to have such powerful female role models that aren't in your family, that's for sure, because if Carl was my only role model, I'd be really boring.
Oh, come on. Never dull moment around here. For me, Sergio Traverso was one of my first great mentors outside of the family, and just really the quality side and that constant pursuit of excellence and that appreciation of every sip. Like, Sergio is a true bon vivant. He and Phil are great friends. I know it's not supposed to be about family, but out-of-family mentors. But ultimately, it's just that appreciation and the real joy that he gets out of tasting wine, and that I do as well, right? It's just that appreciation for everything you do. And another one is Robbie Meyer, who was my first boss out of graduate school at Peter Michael Winery. And so he taught me probably more than anybody else, because your first vintage, when you're really in there doing it, you've seen it around here at home, you've studied it at school, but there's no substitute for watching a whole vintage happen, and you come in just guns blazing and you walk out just tired and dragging, but you understand literally the fruits of your labor right there, where every pressing decision we were making, I'm in there tasting wine and really getting that understanding of the arc of the journey from the vineyards into how you press, how you age, what are the barrels, when, just everything that goes into it. So those two really probably from a wine standpoint impacted me more than anybody except for Nikki's father, Phil. Who's also one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, and shout out to Keith, who's my boss now. Definitely a mentor. He just works for us. So it kind of feels like family. That's why I didn't mention him. People who work here are family.
Okay, another question from Mary Orland, wine fashionista. She would like to ask, really probably to both of you, what dictates the decision to do hand picking versus mechanical picking for various wines?
You want me to take it? You want it?
I'll take my stab. I'd say we tend to often do part of a block hand, part of a block machine, just so that we can test the quality in tank of the two different picks. I think that gives us a lot of insight to what we can do with all these new machines. I mean, some of these machines are so different than what people probably remember from when machine picking first started about 25 years ago.
More than that
Yeah,
now.
yeah, right, 35, something like that. But yeah, so I think that's one of the things that we like to do is see what happens with the different wine styles. And then oftentimes it's winemaker request for us if they really want something machine picked or really want something hand picked, because the machine picker does have a distemper on it. So, you know,
Right.
it's getting 2 jobs done in one. And then also some hillsides we can't machine pick, so we tend to put those blocks all hand pick. All of our reserve sections that we're putting into things like the nth degree here are hand picked. So you know, it just kind of depends, but I think a lot of it, the stuff that we're talking about, if we should machine or hand pick it, usually is because we want to do sort of an experiment, figure out what the quality looks like with these newer machines.
And what are you seeing? What's the wine? What's the team's feedback been?
The team's feedback has been it's really hard to tell. Once it's in tank and everything is done, like fermentation's done, it's now wine, no longer must. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. Some it's easier than others, I'd say. White wine probably a little bit easier than red wine to tell, but general consensus.
Yeah, and I think that's a key answer is that like Nikki said, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, the machines weren't as gentle and just as good of technology as they are today. Now there's really high frequency shakers, and then they have fans that'll blow to get any of the leaves might fall, they'll be blown away, and these really pure berries come down. And so not seeing a big difference between hand pick and machine pick, which is nice, right? It's just the continual evolution of technology. As Nikki said, there's a destemmer on those machines as well that's able to pull away the rachis, and so you're putting that right back in the field to be composted and break down naturally and just bringing berries in as opposed to the woody tissue that holds that cluster together. So because the quality is comparable and the machines are just more efficient at the end of the day, that we are driving in that direction towards more and more machine harvest. But this was 15 years of this constant experimentation and constantly buying the new machines and the new equipment as they're coming up, and now the technology of what's out there, it's really amazing. So we're well over half, we're probably 60 to 70% machine at this point.
Probably.
Something in that range.
Yeah, and some vineyards we can't machine pick. Like we have some stuff planted in Arroyo Seco, and our next beautiful wine, the Riva Ranch, just segue right in there. It's actually clone 2A, which is the old Wente clone that was first heat treated, not quite long enough to stay in service. But
yeah, and I think this vineyard, the vineyard Nikki's talking about, was planted in 1965. 1964. I was off by here, don't tell anybody. And that, and it's still chugging along and making phenomenal fruit, growing phenomenal fruit. But it's an old quad system, and so we just can't machine harvest it. And at this point, it's so old we probably wouldn't even if we could. But we go in there and do the hand picking there, and then we have other vineyards that we're machine harvesting, most all of them, and we're really again looking any given year and just making sure that we're doing justice to the fruit, right, and the comparable quality. And another piece is the temperature. Right now we do a lot of picking under lights, but bringing lights out, it's expensive. You have the lights there, you have people going through, you miss stuff because it's dark,
right.
And ultimately the machines can pick whenever you want, and that temperature delivery to the winery. And so down to Arroyo Seco, if anybody's driven south on 101 out of Salinas, California, you get to the town of Greenfield, you go hard right, and our single vineyard Riva Ranch is right there up in the foothills just south of the Santa Lucia Highlands. And so we have 2 presses down there, and so we'll literally have just a matter of hours and sometimes less when it goes from vine to the press, and it's happening in the middle of the night when it's very cold. And that's really important to retain those natural fruit flavors that are showing up in our glass of wine.
Yep. Yes.
Affirmative?
Affirmative.
So the River Ranch Chardonnay, now we're basically going up the richness scale. So this is down from Arroyo Seco, and Arroyo Seco has richer soil overall. The Livermore Valley has alluvial soils, and that just means that the soil came from somewhere else. It really flowed as the water flowed. But Arroyo Seco, there's a lot of vegetables farmed down there, a lot of row cropping, and that just really points to the richness of the soil there. And the richer soil leads to richer fruit flavors in the glass. And then also in the Monterey Bay, that you go south down that Salinas Valley, and then you get to Paso, and that's very warm. That hot air rises, and it'll pull the cold air in through the Monterey Bay. But at the same time, it'll pull in more fog that'll soften those vineyards. And so overall, we pick Chardonnay in Livermore during the month of September, and Chardonnay in Arroyo Seco the month of October. So richer soils, longer growing season, another month on the vine, a little bit richer fruit flavors, and then this is now barrel fermented in about 50 to 60% new barrels on any given vintage. So it just has a bigger, richer style to it.
Right. And I always like to point out that, I mean, any place that I've worked in San Luis Obispo, I've worked in Sonoma, I've worked in Napa, I've worked in Livermore, and I've worked in Monterey at Arroyo Seco AVA, and every other place I've worked, Chardonnay is picked in August or September. It's not picked in October. So having that extra month of hang time really does allow that fruit expression to develop so boldly that you can put a little bit more oak in that wine and not lose the fruit. Whereas in some other places that you might not have that extra hang time, you might not be able to have that oak stand up to the fruit. So you might lose the wine to the oak, which some people love. Like I love that every now and again.
Yeah.
Just have an oak bomb. I love it.
Yeah, the rich wines are awesome, and we always think about adding the richness in, but making sure that that fruit just stands up top. And I think you have the Wente clones and the Wente selections over the generations towards the richer, more yummy, intense fruit flavors. And then again, the barrel fermentation, the surly aging, and the batonnage, and the malolactic fermentation really add cool, rich components. But again, fruit reigns supreme.
Yes. Agreed. I'll just
check.
Can you guys talk about the property down at Riva a little bit in detail? How it's laid out?
Okay. Yeah. So we purchased the property, I believe in 1962. Riva Ranch, yes. Riva Ranch, 61, 62, sometime in the early 60s. And then we began planting in 64. So we actually have like 5 or 6 blocks of vineyard, mostly Pinot Noir, a little bit of Gewürztraminer, and 1 block of Chardonnay from the 64 planting. And those are all in the quad system. Those are all real fun to farm. Just they look like monsters, I swear. But we're situated right next to the Santa Lucia Highlands, right along the Arroyo Seco, like right there. You can see it right from our vineyard. So what we have there is, while we do have richer soils in a lot of the vineyard areas, we also have what we like to call Arroyo Seco potatoes, which are rocks the size of my head all throughout our vineyards. It's just crazy rocky because we are right next to the river. So you had all of those giant boulders being degraded or decomposed to some sort of, getting smaller from the water, something like that. And so that does help to stress out the vineyards a little bit while they have a lot of nutrients in that rich soil. As you get further away from the Arroyo Seco, you definitely get richer soils. As you get closer to it, it's better drained, bigger rock content, less clay content, and just really great grape growing environment. We are situated right up against the foothills. We have one vineyard that is just down a hill, and if it was just up a little bit higher on that hill, it would be in the Santa Lucia Highlands. That's how close we are. It's right there.
Literally next door.
Yeah. And our whole vineyard is consecutive, right next to each other. We have a little bit of an elevation change. It goes from about 300 to 800 at our highest point. We call it Bailey Hill, aka Little Knob, because it's right at the top of a little knobby hill. The scariest thing to drive up there, I honestly don't know who had
Watch
the
her
heart.
freak out when we go up
I
that
just
hill,
like hold my breath.
Think about who cut that road because
I
it's this awesome little. But you got this great view of the Santa Lucia Highlands there.
Yeah.
Our vineyards right there, and it's like you get a bird's eye view anytime you go up there. So it's pretty awesome.
It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and it's a beautiful block of Pinot Noir. We're not drinking Pinot here, but it is gorgeous, absolutely wonderful. And so these it has just a little bit of a flowing hillside there that makes up our Arroyo Seco portfolio.
Any questions on Arroyo Seco?
Couple other questions, if you guys don't mind.
We don't mind.
Thank
We're here
you
all
so
night.
much. Some of these are more like general. So I'm going to intersperse with talking about the wine. So palate exposure, Ilona Thompson said Chardonnay is a variety that lends itself most naturally as a winemaker's canvas and takes on his or her vision. Do you agree or disagree?
100% agree. And when I was 15, 16, maybe 17 years old, I went driving with Uncle Phil and a grape grower, and Phil was just showing off our valley and showing off our appellation, and he said, Chardonnay offers the winemaker the broadest palette upon which to paint. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what that means. It sounds sort of corny and sort of cool at the same time. But there's something there. And now that I'm coming up on my 20th vintage, there's no doubt I can say with confidence that Chardonnay does afford the winemaker the broadest palette upon which to paint, because of the picking decision selections, the barrel selections, the sur-lie aging, the batonnage, the length of time, as well as malolactic fermentations. You get to play with all four of those levers, and they show up more expressively in Chardonnay and more beautifully at the same time than in any other wine.
I mean, we have 4 here, and we could easily have 7 more just from our winemaking team, getting some experimental stuff in. Yeah,
because we're going through the 18 blends right now of Riva Ranch and Morning Fog, and we have so many different lots, right? Some stainless tanks. We even have concrete tanks that we're looking at and working with. You have new barrels, you have older barrels, 1-year, 2-year-old, different toast levels, all these different things. So we could literally put 100 different Chardonnays on the table, and they each have different flavors coming through.
Okay, we've got about 18 minutes left, and I've got a couple more questions. So since we've got the nth, we're going to hold off and delay our gratification first, if you don't mind. Question here is, could you...
you were supposed to, I was...
Given that you're a Gemini card.
Laser focus.
Either way, it doesn't matter. Question for, I guess, really Carl, which would be evolutionarily speaking, since you're the older cousin. Could you talk about the progression of these wines as they were released, commercially? And sorry, but a tangential question. Talk a little bit about what you feel the audience is for each wine.
Ooh. So the arc of these specific vintages is the question?
The style of the wine. So when it comes to introducing Chardonnay to the greater public, they're curious about, which style came out first, and then how did it evolve from there?
Chronologically, so we've had our Riva Ranch Single Vineyard Chardonnay and our Morning Fog Chardonnay. Our family's been making them before I got here, and those styles are really sort of determined based on the vineyards and based on what works. Now, we continue to refine picking decisions. There's new vineyards that'll come in, the clonal material, which is mostly of the Wente clone and the descendants of the Wente clone. And then our Morning Fog Chardonnay, it hasn't been called Morning Fog Chardonnay for the last 50 years. We've certainly been making a Chardonnay out of Livermore in that very similar style. So really it's just the refinement of these, and again, continuing to stand on the shoulders of giants of the previous generation that have had such great impact on the wine industry. And then these two really were bred out of nth degree Chardonnay. That's the style that I like, right? So you're trying to make wine, and if you're tasked with making the best wine you can out of your region of Chardonnay, or out of your region in Livermore, and making a Chardonnay, you tend to chase what you like. I love those Peter Michael styles of wine. Drink a lot of Ramey, drink a lot of Kistler as well. That's a leaner style coming through, and just wanting that rich expression while respecting the fruit flavors. Versus Eric Chardonnay was just, my dad laid out exactly how he wanted it made. We made the first vintage based on his specifications. He tasted it and he said, yeah, let's bottle that and let's put it through the tasting room. And we the winemaking team at the time, wanted to call it Big Daddy Chardonnay, because my dad's, he was a winemaker for a long time, CEO for a long time, and he's just, around. He still has a great reputation out there, and That lost to the marketing team, so we couldn't call it Big Daddy Chardonnay. So we went with Eric Chardonnay. So
Next
I don't know if
best.
that answers the question in terms of the wines, but then it's just been that continual refinement of that style. So each one of those 4 wines have their distinct style, and we just continue to chase that point of view.
Yeah, I'll stab at these are for. I mean, we'll obviously say they're for everyone. Everyone should love every wine. I love every wine. But what I would say is that the Eric Chardonnay is great for the anything but Chardonnay group, because we know it's out there. We don't love it, but we know it's out there, and we're here to change your mind. The Morning Fog, I always say, is the gateway to Chardonnay. So if you're not really sure about Chardonnay, don't love it, don't know, this one will get you there. It's right there. It'll get you right in. The Riva is for your experienced Chardonnay drinker. Don't try this at home, kids. That degree is for those that want to take it up a notch, want to get that really elegant, big, bold, beautiful, well-balanced, but extra. You know, the extra people out there.
Yeah, so I think that's well said, right? It's across the range. They're all for everybody. You can really pick what you're into, and again, I can't say anything better than what she said. I'll just be quiet now.
Okay, let's talk again.
So the nth degree Chardonnay, I've alluded to it or said it outright, is my first vintage after school was Peter Michael Winery, and you remember those first experiences, and Peter Michael Winery are making great Chardonnays and have been known for it for a while. And so I just came back to Livermore and did everything that they were doing of what I had learned across that vintage, and farming the best that you could, picking it at night, cold into the winery, the press cycle that you go through. There's many ways to press grapes. You don't even think about that if you're not into winemaking. And then how long you settle it, or how short of a time you settle it. That juice, as the solids and the juice goes down, we go for shorter settling times, so there's more solids in there. It's a little bit more of a risky way to make wine, but risk reward comes through. Natural fermentation, where you're not inoculating the ferment, not putting any outside yeast in, and so that brings a richness as well. And then the surly aging and that batonnage, and then making sure you leave it on the leaves for a long enough period of time to really allow for the release of those expressive, yeasty, nutty, dough-like characteristics. And so trying to put all those pieces together where richness reigns supreme, but the fruit is just sitting right there up top. So really enjoy the constant evolution, it's a evolution, not a revolution in any given vintage, but it's just that N+1. What can we do next year? And even if I taste this wine right here, I'm thinking about the 18 that's in the barrel, and then I'm thinking about the 19 that Nikki and her team are out there farming, and how are you constantly thinking, how can we do this better? How can we make it that much more intangibly yummy, beautiful, fun?
How do you want to leaf it? Do you want a tunnel? Do you want a clean leaf? Do you want to leave a sombrero?
What is a sombrero?
It's you leave a little hat. Just on every cluster gets a little hat.
So Nikki's talking about just the cultural practices out in the vineyard, and like you can pull leaves just on the morning side as opposed to the sun side, or you can go in and pull the leaves out of the interior, or you can leave just a little shade that's coming over, and so there's many ways to go.
Yeah. And it'll give you tons of different fruit expressions.
Right, and then picking, right? You can pick at 21 bricks through 24 and a half, 25 bricks,
Right,
and
yeah.
it's crazy.
Some questions about the nth from the group. Palate Exposure says, it's clear you've invested yourself in your craft to the nth degree. It's hard to imagine improvement on what I'm tasting. However, where is the room for advancement in the Chardonnay world in your view?
If it ain't broke, you can still fix it.
If it ain't broke, you can still fix it. That's what I just said at one of our team meetings, and it's true. And so that was, thank you for the compliments on the nth degree Chardonnay. That being said, always thinking about ways to improve. Think about the oak mix, and I really love Francois Ferrer and Louis Latour barrels for Burgundian wines for our Chardonnay and our Pinot Noir. But then looking at other barrels that are out there, the time in glass, how much time in barrel versus how much time in tank before you bottle versus how much time in glass before you release, and all those little just N+1, right? Not looking for these huge steps because I really love this wine, and anything that's too big of a departure, it's not in the style. Now for Chardonnay as a whole, there isn't anything but Chardonnay something out there, but Chardonnay is still the #1 grape out there, and it's the #1 grape out there because it's awesome. The diversity of what could come through. People do no bias, right? I mean, this is what I like, and I drink more Chardonnay than anything else. But people like richness. They like what comes through and how you can have richness, delicacy at the same time, and it's #1 for good cause because it's awesome. Hashtag Chardonnay.
Yeah. Hashtag Wente Live, hashtag make time.
There you go.
Just reminding.
National Chardonnay Day is coming up, and so National Chardonnay Day happens on the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend every year, and it's something that we very much get behind. And Memorial Day weekend every year is my birthday weekend. I go up to Tahoe and I celebrate it with all of the various Chardonnays that we have and friends out at the end of the dock playing music. It's a place that Nikki's and my our great grandfather bought in the 20s, I think. Went up there hunting and fishing. It used to take them 12 hours on a little dirt road, and it's just a beautiful spot, one of the places that we treasure. And so I'm going to be enjoying a bunch of Chardonnay up at Tahoe at the end of the dock. God willing, with the weather, it might be a little cold, playing music, hanging out with friends, and enjoying the fruits of the labor. Yeah,
and if you guys want to hang out with me on National Chardonnay Day, at 3 p.m. I will be doing a live toast with my sister, Jordan Wente, 5th generation wine grower. I mean, sister, same generation. Math. But 3 p.m. I'm doing a live toast on Instagram and Facebook to celebrate National Chardonnay Day. Tell you a little bit about Chardonnay that you've probably already heard today, but it's always good to hear it twice. They say you don't remember anything unless you hear it 6 times, right? Or is it 3?
More than once,
more
for sure.
Once.
But ultimately, yeah, just our family's pride with Chardonnay, with what we're doing, the thoughtful styles that we're making out of our vineyards and what's coming through. I can't say how fun it is. Thank you for your compliments coming back, but just how fun and rewarding it is to see you and your passion like rolling through in all of this. And so it is awesome, rewarding, fun, and the likes. And
clearly, I'm having fun.
It's what time did you get up this morning?
5.
5. What time are you getting up tomorrow morning?
5.
Right, so it goes with it. Actually, farmer, and so up before the sun comes up pretty regularly, and that's part of what it is. But when you're out there in the fields, seeing the natural beauty, being outside, smelling the smells of life, and then ultimately the reward at the end of it, all of it, like our work goes into making a bottle of wine, making a glass of wine, and that's so rewarding and cool.
It really is.
A couple of questions. Let's see. Carl and Nikki, you too. Any AVAs, this is from Wine Fashionista, any AVAs you're interested in exploring that you're not working with currently?
So we're working with Livermore Valley AVA, where we are right now, in Arroyo, Seco, Monterey. And now there's other fruit that'll come through the winery at various times. This is really our focus. And so I don't spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time drinking, tasting other wines out there, so to know what the world of wine has in store. But I don't spend a lot of time looking over the fence and saying, I want to be that. I really point the finger back at our vineyards and our winemaking choices and practices and say, what enables the best expression of our estate-grown vineyards? So really, staying at home, focused at home. Now, if you go out there, I love drinking Montrachet. I love the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc when it comes through. I love all of California and Chardonnay and what it can do and what it can bring to the table. I love going up to the Okanagan Valley, and I love going to the Guadalupe Valley in Mexico and everything in between, right? There's so many phenomenal places to grow grapes on the west coast of North America, and that's just west coast of North America than every other region in the world. As I say this, I get excited thinking about traveling, right? I want to go to Tuscany. I want to go to Bordeaux. You won that Rochambeau, so you're the one that's going on the Bordeaux cruise that Nikki gets to go through and do it. So that was a big non-answer to that question. I focus the attention to growing the best grapes and making the best wine out of our 2 appellations, and then learning and understanding what other people are doing, and live by the motto that good artists borrow and great artists steal. So any great ideas that are out there that can help Nikki and I do our job better, we're all about it.
Yeah. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with everything he said. We're really focused on what we have. We have a lot. I mean, I feel blessed every day to wake up and do what I do and have the family that's had this beautiful dream that they've lived and that I can live. And thank you, parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, everyone. through the line. But I mean, I absolutely love Oregon. I love Washington. I think that, again, the entire West Coast does a really great job. Santa Barbara is an awesome AVA. Paso, I mean, Napa and Sonoma, but everyone knows those ones, so we'll leave those at the side. Love them, don't get me wrong, but I want to focus on what we have, and I want to see what other people are up to, but I want to really focus on what we got going on here.
So two kind of polar opposite questions here. One is Carl, and this is you to Nikki's. Do you consider the Nth Degree a cerebral solitary sipper or a food wine? If both are the latter, what foods would you pair? And that goes for both of you. And I have another question after that.
All of the wines that we make are cerebral, solitary sippers and food wines. They don't have to be mutually exclusive because acidity allows for the pair. And as you have bigger, richer Chardonnays, it narrows it a bit of what you can pair with. But you think about the range of pastas that can be out there. It could be a chicken-based pasta. It could be a poultry. It could be a pork-based.
I was just going to say, I would have pork.
You can go into salmon, you can go into halibut, you can go across a wide range of what's out there, and then how you sauce it, you can see like a mango chutney on top of a piece of fish and how that could tie it together. Or you can go to the smoked pork chop, which we've had here at Wente Vineyards for generations. So wide range. So.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the other question is from Julia in Eugene, Oregon, Julia Wine. She says, I love all Chardonnay, but I lean towards unoaked or neutral oak Chards. Will you consider making more unoaked, maybe a single vineyard series of Chardonnays without new oak?
So Eric Chardonnay is a single vineyard wine. We don't put that on the label. It comes out of the Eric's Vineyard, which is one of the vineyards that are the Nikki Farms. It's up on our way to our golf course and our restaurant. And
didn't it say single vineyard? No.
It
is a single vineyard.
It is a single vineyard. So we continue to sort of explore best ways to show the expressions of what we're growing and what we're doing.
Do you want another one? I mean, I told you we can make more. We can make 20 more Chardonnays. I'm happy to do it.
We certainly could.
Here's a cerebral question from Ilona Thompson for both of you. What in your view is missing from the wine conversations today? Take your time thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I think that, at least maybe in my generation, people go into the store looking for something high quality but also lower in the price range. And I think that people aren't really talking in my age group, generally speaking, about what goes into making a bottle of wine, the struggle behind it, getting people, paying people, living in the Bay Area. That's absurd. Like, it's ridiculous here. Just the whole process of putting a really high quality bottle of wine on the table, that's not being talked about as much. And people are judging your wine, giving you scores, but they don't know what went into making this beautiful bottle of wine that we put our heart and soul into. And it's people, it's materials, it's everything. I mean, there a lot goes into this. It's hard work and it's not always fun. I mean, no one likes getting into a tractor in the rain to go mow a vineyard. It's not fun all the time. And that's not really talked about.
Yeah. I think, well said. The more we know about our food supply, what we eat and what we drink, the better we are as a society and as a community, and just the continual education across all those things. But it's not to say that
sustainable wine growing, that's not talked about.
Sustainable wine growing and all the great stuff that we're doing out there, just continuing down that track, as well as all of our vineyards are sustainably certified, as well as our winemaking facilities certified sustainable, and we have an on-site audit every 2 years where they come in and report on all the good things that we're doing, from recycling, from how we fertilize, from how we use our water as efficiently as possible. All of our water that we use in the winery to wash tanks goes to a pond system, two-stage pond system that we're able to inject back into the vineyards as irrigation. So we really focus on doing the best we can, being the best stewards that we can.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of focus gets put on biodynamics, organics, that sort of thing, which is great. I'm not not ragging on biodynamics or organics at all, but no one really talks about sustainability. And really what sustainability is bringing to the table is forward thinking. We're really farming for the future. We're only doing things that we know are safe for the environment, safe for our community, and beneficial to everyone around us, safe for our employees. We're really focused on farming for the future as a sustainable wine growing organization. And so we're just different than organics and biodynamics. I mean, we're still really great for the environment, and I think it's not really talked about, which I would love to see it talked about. Do research on sustainable wine growing. Next thing to Google. I swear it's great.
Well, thank you all so much for taking the time, the great questions that you had coming out. Very much appreciated. Great job as always.